Hi, good afternoon. So today lesson I'm going through essay question 2. So this question is an extension of what we learned in question 1. But the main purpose of why I'm going through this question, purpose number 1 is we want to look at the analysis of the question so that we are able or I'm able to help you to think about the questions and then selecting the right KRs. Okay, so how to know that you are actually selecting the right KR? A certain point later on, I will talk about phrasing of the KR because how to actually write in an analytical way instead of a descriptive way. Point number 2 over here is actually the diagram drawing plus explanation, because suggested answer actually didn't give you the explanation. Okay, so let us just look at the question here. For this question, the question is asking for why. So I know that many of you will focus on explain, but why here is coming out with the reasons. Okay, they want to know 2 reasons for why the comparative advantage. I think definition you should know, and it might change over time because comparative advantage is dynamic as the country actually progresses. Okay, so let us just, before we look at the answer, the examiner comment to highlight to you. Okay, so which is why I want to focus on the thinking part. Okay, many students actually describe the factors, okay, that might cause the comparative advantage to change. So why did they describe the factor? Reason is actually maybe mentioned about the in this case factors such as decline in mineral resources. So when there is a decline in mineral resources, we want to know what causes this to happen. Okay, then changes to the workforce. So very easily you can say that there is an increase in the quality of the labor. So one thing that we want to see is this particular economy, what causes the change in the workforce. So actually over here it requires contextualization. So when you are selecting your KR, please make sure that you have examples or real world examples to support your explanation. Okay, so later on you look at the subsequent part about changes in technology, changes brought on by globalization, and changes due to the government policy. I must say that the subsequent 2 points are actually better. Reason is because this is actually an event. This is also an event. Okay, so this event itself, we want to see the event. How does it cause the change in factor endowment? So how does it change event? So actually the reasons here is, this is the reasons that causes the change in the factor endowment. Okay, so you are to explain this, and in which I think some of you who are a bit sharper, you will realize that I am further on emphasizing on this cause and effect framework for you to think about the points that you are writing. And then here, phrasing of the KR. So what you can do is, I know that many of you mentioned that in your KR, you will say change in labor or workforce. Okay, however, you do see my key requirement here. I phrase it in a different way as compared to, I mean, suggested answer also put it in this way lah. But what I hope that you can see is this is like your prompt, and to put it in a cause and effect model. So in this case, my KR1 impact of government policies on the factor endowment of an economy. So an economy over here is for you to actually identify the real world example that you know of. So suggested answer is actually based on what I think most of you can understand, but of course you might have better knowledge on other areas that you can put in as well. So this is the suggested answer is still a suggestion. However, when we read through that, we just want to see how they actually came out with a more analytical answer. So to summarize this point about the thinking and selection of KR, down to the idea of phrasing of the KR, I think the overarching learning point will be consistent use of the cause and effect framework to think about what is then the event and then what kind of effect that they are looking at. And of course, for this question, they ask for why, and hence the reason itself will be the event that we are talking about. So this is the reason why when you look at our suggested answer, we focuses on government policy, and later on there are two also globalization, how it will affect the factor endowment. So leave it open here for you to think, and what I meant by leave it open is actually it depends on your own knowledge and the study. So because didn't want you to really memorize, but of course some real world example that you know of, so that very easily it is important for you to see that how your knowledge, or maybe more knowledge that you will learn, actually help you to decide on the points that you want to write, but keep this as a prompt. So government policy, I think on Monday some of you are able to see that our emphasis on R&D. Okay, the spelling is wrong, but ignore that. And then our education system, or our skills future program. I use the word our because this is referring to Singapore case. Okay, if you have better knowledge of the other countries, actually you can do that. And then how the emphasis on R&D actually bring about the idea of improving our quality of capital goods, or in this case you can mention about how we have keywords if you want to use is process innovation. Okay, then for education and skills future, you can actually read these together with the suggested answer. Did mention about the idea of increase in high skilled labor, and therefore because of that they are able to gain the CA, okay, in the production of high skilled labor intensive goods. Okay, example is pharmaceutical product, then IT solutions, etc. Okay, so over here you do see that this is actually the contextualization real world example. I use Singapore as an example. And then in terms of phrasing, we want to see that gain the CA in the production of high skilled labor intensive goods. Okay, then the low skilled labor intensive goods will then be like production of cloth, agricultural products. But in the real world right now, even the production of agricultural product in Singapore, we also use capital, and we needed high skilled workers to function on that. However, we just leave it aside first. Okay, so this is actually the first part of the answer, to look at how the policy actually changes our factor endowment, and being able to give example, explain step by step, and then highlight the last part on gaining the CA in the production. Okay, so when I say gaining the CA, there is a part that I didn't mention. So the introduction here mentioned that theory of CA states that countries benefit from trade when they specialize in the production and exporting of goods that they can produce at a lesser or lower opportunity cost than other. Okay, so this is actually my intro to talk about what is meant by theory of CA. Then later on, trade is mutually beneficial so long as a country has a CA in at least one good. Okay, so it could be a case that a country has absolute advantage, then the country with lesser quality in their factor endowment is not so good. They do not have any absolute advantage, but they do have a comparative advantage. So it is further emphasizing the idea of comparative advantage when we are comparing the factor endowment, and a country is able to produce or specialize in the production that they can produce at a lower opportunity cost. Okay, then the last point over here is the country CA can shift over time. So this is usually the last sentence in your intro to highlight that what is your KR1 and your KR2. Okay, so it changes your opportunity cost. So later on, we'll be looking at the diagram and how it changes the opportunity cost. Okay, KR2 over here is the impact of, you could talk about globalization. Then some of you talk about natural disasters and how it actually affect the factor endowment, so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through the KR2 in details because suggested answer did give you a bit of more information and also the explanation. So to sum up for this particular point about writing of your KR, summing up for my first point, as mentioned, it is actually the analysis of the question and then being able to use the cause and effect model. Okay, this particular model, let me actually highlight it in red color, then you are able to see. So using this framework to be able to write out the impact in a systematic manner until the end of it, being able to come out with the conclusion that how it changes the comparative advantage. So it changes for Singapore case, I think not that you are not aware of. So we changes from used to be in the 1960s, 1980s, we are heavy on the production of manufactured goods. So subsequently, on top of the semiconductor, I must say semiconductor is still one of the products that we have the comparative advantage in, because over the years we improve on the production process and also improve on the production processed. Okay, so we improve on the product, and as of now, compared to the other countries, I think Taiwan is also strong at semiconductor, but because of our rigorous or maybe consistent, continuous R&D, we still keep our semiconductor to be one of the major products that we export to the other countries. Then over time, we also gain the comparative advantage in pharmaceutical product. Okay, pharmaceutical product, I think I mentioned to you in the lesson already, so I don't want to go on, but it is actually gaining the CA in the production. Okay, so this is actually the I would say the standard phrasing. Okay, gain the CA in the production. So since this is the standard phrasing, it means that we are able to produce high skill labor intensive products or goods at a lower opportunity cost. Okay, so this is actually a last step to be able to highlight that the changes in factor endowment, and then this is in fact the outcome, which is the impact or the effect that you want to say or to show. Okay, so with that, I think I end off the first part. We talk about analysis of the question, and I extended it a bit to talk about the systematic way of writing out your answer. Now I'm coming to the second part. Second part is this diagram drawing part, in which I think the suggested answer give you the diagram, but I just want to add on to the explanation so that you are able to also show this in your answer, because the examiner comment mentioned that very few of them use the production possibility frontier. Okay, I just want to highlight that examiner comment mentioned about this, and then I know that there is a diagram shown, and also want you to be better than what is being mentioned in the suggested answer. So follow me for the second part in the next video.